Boom, boom, boom. Testing. Okay. Cool. La la la.
Hello, Dino. Hello, Dino.
Yeah, okay, Hal. That's all you can say. You've been reduced down to hello, Dino. We will rebuild you. So, I'm playing with the Unreal. Trying a few things out. Wow, that's noisy. When I hit play, I hear a lot of... Oh, I think it's the scene. It's ambient sounds. Stuff. And that, coming from this loop, blueprints. It's like... You get it? Oh, it won't let me edit it while it's... Yeah, so, look at that. You want to put... If you want to put blueprints in a loop, not pretty. That's doing a delay and then printing text, and the text it prints is... Isn't that annoying how those pop-ups appear all the time? I don't know whoever invented pop-ups. Got a lot to answer for. Does anybody read them? That's the funny thing, you know, those pop-ups, they pop up everywhere. And most of the time I don't think anybody actually reads them. But yeah, see, I'm trying to point at things with my mouse, and then every tick. Oh, that's interesting. Right. Every tick. I think I've done something naughty here. Yeah. It just occurred to me that how
Hello, Dino.
how does that actually work? There's a mysterious question. Hang on. Learning Unreal. So, break the link, and then over here, break the links. Extract. Break the link. Take it anymore. I'm gonna have to. Have to search for turn off blueprint tool tips. Oh, hey Mike, how you doing? It's been a while. Back. Look at that. That white background there, searing my face off. I have zero tolerance to bright white screens. The only thing Hal does now is just say hello, Dino. Hello, Hal. And even then, doesn't. Hello, Hal.
Hello, Dino. Hello, Dino.
So, and does it twice for no discernible reason. To disable it in the editor, just type state allow tooltip 0 in the console. Window Window Developer Tools Session Front End. Gosh, there's a way to do it. Hello there. Who's that? You have kind of a long name. I'll call you Prime. Short. Text up here is too small. Trouble seeing it from here. I'm quite away from the screen. Can I zoom in on you? I can't. That doesn't work. No zoom in. When it let me zoom. Okay. Well, anyway. Yeah. Illus Prime. Oh, Lacto. All right. I'll call him Lacto. I probably am a little bit lacto intolerant, so I guess I was resistant. We just geek to the nerd to the max or something. Rose. Oh yes. Okay. Yeah, Rose. Anyway, good evening. So I'm learning Unreal. I was saying, and why am I doing that and not Unity? I think I'm trying something different. I have a few reasons to lose interest in Unity. And I'm doing, as you may know, I'm working on my Phi programming language. I did a reveal on the Phi channel. Was a point to that story. What was it? Oh yeah, well I mean I've written Phi in C++ up to this point, so it makes sense to maybe stay in that domain. That good. Lactose intolerance was the source of my relicted. Right. Okay. Okay. Well, then you brought things full circle. Because yes, I'm not actually streaming on Phi today. I will be. This will be connected with Phi, but this is a little more kind of this is more to do with me figuring out stuff on Unreal, but it's also Nugget. What I'm actually doing is I want to create a Nugget window. So, you know, Nugget, the Network Unified Game Generation Engine and Tools, is basically an architectural framework that I've been concepting and working on as an idea for a while, and I was making a game engine in C as an experiment with the architecture. That was the last time I was streaming. So what Nugget Window is, and it's a tool I want to use for Phi, because what I want to do is connect Phi to a graphic library, but I don't want to do it in the normal way that it's done. Normally you want to connect it, you will go and find some 2D library like SDL or whatever, and then you've got to go through the rigmarole of finding it, decide which version you want to use, and then put it into your project, and then figure out how to get the thing to link up properly, or you have to build the thing from source, because almost inevitably if you don't, then you have the DLLs or whatever else it is, and you find that there's an incompatibility with the version of Visual Studio that you're using, so that you then spend a day figuring out how to make the thing link, and you know, this isn't programming, and I'm bored of that whole thing. It just die a little. So that's what Nugget is supposed to sort of help with, because the Nugget approach to this is I have my language interpreter. It runs a little virtual machine or whatever, it's actually stupidly small. You wouldn't believe how small it is in the end because I'm using Antler for the parsing, but that's another story. And so this thing is there, and it would be really nice if I could connect it to a 2D graphical display so that I can actually do I can make a little 2D game engine by taking Phi and a front, graphical front end. But I don't want to have to take a graphical library and put it into my project directly, because then my lovely Phi project starts getting cluttered with all this other stuff, and this makes me die a little. So the solution, the nugget solution to this, is that you make a standalone graphic. It's not a library as such, it's a utility. What it is it listens on a network, on a socket, and you connect to it from some other program. It connects to it and is able to draw on the screen and move things around over the network, so that then my Phi project, all it needs to do is have some nice little socket layer on there to connect to my nugget window, and then my project compiles stupidly fast, and does everything that it does with a very stupidly lightweight interface to whatever the graphical front end is. Because it connects over a network, it's completely decoupled, and then I can have a front end of whatever I like. Like, for example, I could make the front end, in this case, Unreal. And so now my crazy plan here, because I also want to figure out, hey Amiga 500, good to see you. What I want to do is a number of things. Like I'm as those of you who followed me before will know, that's what I like to do. There's a number of, when I'm doing something, there's a number of reasons behind it. So the reason why I am looking at creating a nugget window in Unreal and not in Unity, I could do it in Unity very fast, stupidly fast, but then I'm using Unity, and then I'm not learning anything new, and I have reasons that I want to learn more about Unreal and start looking at Unreal. So I could go this way, and this way I figure out stuff with Unreal and also get my nugget window, and then when I've got my nugget window, then I can have that as a standalone program, and then I connect Phi to it. That's basically the whole flipping story. So if I can, for example, if I can get a component that goes on an actor in Unreal that is able to listen on the network to the output from Phi, then I can make Phi control objects in a scene, and that would be pretty cool. That's my plan. And now, of course, I could do this in just C++, but that isn't good enough for me, because I want to figure out how to also use blueprints, because not just using blueprints is pretty easy, but to create the blueprints by themselves do not have any network stuff, of course. What I want to do is create my own C++ class that then can be used inside blueprints. And yes, I wouldn't need to really use blueprints, but I want to learn how to do that, because in projects, almost all game projects, they're not entirely C++. People like to use blueprints, and blueprints are good for certain things. But the real power of it is where you can make your own custom classes. So there's the whole flipping story of the plan. It's like when I was doing the C game engine thing, previous time I was streaming, I would have a stack of things that I want to achieve, and it would get nested quite down, but they would all have a reason. So this is Phi, I want a graphical interface for Phi, I want to learn Unreal, I want to look into creating my own custom classes in Unreal that I can use in blueprints. And so that's where I am down there right now. I hope that made some kind of sense. I'm just going to check the chat, but I really need to make this chat sort of bigger. Tell you what I can. Screen's too far away. Hang on, I'm going to lean forward. Happy New Year, Amiga 500. Yes, the network, it won't be slow at all. I'll explain why in a minute. Everybody thinks that, but it's an irrational way of looking at it. Everybody just assumes that the network is too slow. I can rant about this. I'll come back to that in a moment. I'm not making a new game. My main focus is really Phi, but I need to prepare, as I was saying. Learning new stuff doesn't. That's an interesting one, Mike. It's like learning stuff only stresses you out when you have to learn it with a time pressure, and that is probably how we manage to sort of kill people's enthusiasm for learning stuff. If you don't have a time pressure on it, then it's not a problem. Why would it stress you out? You've seen me do that when I was doing Nugget. Very different when I was doing Kickoff Revival. Kickoff Revival, I was learning stuff all the time, but I was also under a deadline. And then, yeah, it's not the learning, it's the pressure. So I felt it when I was because I've got a little bit of a way in using Unreal, not that far, but I've got a little bit. But at first you pick up a new engine and you've got to look, and you don't know where anything is, and then you're looking for the documentation. The documentation for Unreal is not great. It's not. Unity's is a lot better. And that can be quite stressful, but again, it's only stressful if you're impatient. Just be patient. Be relaxed about it. It's fine. Anyway, so where did I get? So right now, for example, well, that's the other thing, is that as I get older, I realise that irritations need to be dealt with, right? They just do, because they just wear you down. So, for example, the tooltips thing here is a real that's driving me nuts. So now I'm looking for a way to turn them off, and I think I did find them, so I'm going to turn it off and then carry on with the next thing. Yeah, thanks, Mike. But you see, Nugget, that whole philosophy and architectural philosophy, it's so difficult to get anybody to. Was weird. It's difficult to. One of the really difficult life lessons is that a great idea is Have you noticed how difficult it is to get a good idea to stick? It's tragic. And I'm looking at, as I look at programming and I think about ways of programming and the habits that we have, and then I want to break those habits. So that's why you're always seeing me do crazy stuff. But it's not crazy really, but it's stuff that a lot of the time people don't do because they're too busy. They're too busy to actually take a deep breath and say, yeah, you know, there is another way. So, but that's it. Anyway, I'm rabbiting on, but that's, I guess, what I do. How long has it been since I streamed? Development. It's got to be over a year. Anyway, what we've got here is there is this can I make this bigger? I can. So the tip is there's this console, developer tools session front end. I've never used that, but I think can I dock this? Can you dock this? No, you can't dock it. Park it there then. But I need to go to Window, Developer Tools. There's something. Oh God. Sometimes it's easier if you could just type. So this gives this weird console I've never seen before. And apparently, if I go into there and I say Slate allow tooltip 0. And then let's see. But now, whenever I'm doing something like this, this is my assumption, ladies and gentlemen. My assumption is I've done that. Theoretically, it should work. And it's not going to work. Yeah, I knew it. I knew it. I just knew it. It never works. You're always doing this. It never works. It's like, you know, disable, because probably... Yeah, what? I don't know. He got it to work. Awesome, got it to work. But this was in 2015, so no doubt it doesn't do that. Lateral multidisciplinary thinking. I like that. I'm taking a liking to you, Lacto, because I love that kind of thing. Nice lateral multidisciplinary thinking. That's the phrase of the day. Yeah, I knew it. I called it, didn't I? I said it would. I said it wouldn't work. Did somebody else have to?
Hello,
Thank
Dino.
you. In 2009, 2020, it was a terrible year. But one good thing is that it was the year that this message was posted. Sorry for bumping this zombie thread. No, I'm grateful. However, if you're coming to this thread from Google, the command to disable tooltips changed. Of course it did. Of course it changed. We can't keep things the same. So, yes, Slate enable tooltip 0. Okay, so we'll try that again. If I can find the thing. Where was this? Oh, we have to go through this again. Look, aren't I just a big moaner? I am. I'm so tired. I'm tired. It's sort of like, what was it called again? Session front end. There we go. Oh yeah. Paste. Send command. Okay, I can see that it actually did something more that time. And now applying, Dino's rule of inevitability. I give it 50-50 that it works and I've turned off tooltips. But really, I'm resigning myself to it. Well, I'm resigning myself to failure on this point. You see, now this is the bit that is stressful when you're under pressure. I had 2 weeks to ship a demo in Unreal when I never used Unreal before. And so I had to learn Unreal from scratch for a demo in 2 weeks. And that was stressful. Did it though? Well, all right. Shall we see? And the reason I said that is because I almost don't want to check. I don't want to check. I'm here going. Yes, it worked. Oh, amazing! It only took 2 attempts. Oh, my day is better already. Look at that. There's no stupid tooltip popping up. The thing about tooltips is, no, I didn't do crunch to do it, Mike. I didn't. No crunch. I did it without doing crunch in 2 weeks. No crunch. But pretty much every moment of my working day was intensely focused, and this was a VR project. Ooh, not only, I didn't give you the full story of this one. Not only was it, it's kind of interesting as why someone starting a job would be given something like this to do. It wasn't just my first time using Unreal, it was my first time developing in VR. Hey! Wow. Using it on. Yeah, just thinking about it, that's crazy. But I did it. It was successful. And I didn't crunch. Hey there, Zag. How you doing? Sorry, I think you said 100% with me. I missed that I missed it was you, Zag. It's like the old crowd back again. Look at that. Still there. Yeah. Yeah, those were the days. Do you remember the thing that in the end forced me away from using Visual Studio so that I would, for the last few years, I've been using Emacs. I'm back in Visual Studio again. And that's the funny thing, is that ultimately it was the thing that drove me from Visual Studio was the inability to turn tooltips off. I did a rant video about it. But I'm working in C++, and the settings in here, look at this. It looks like by default the tooltips are turned off in Visual Studio. I can't tell you what a joy it is not to have those stupid tooltip pop-ups, which when you're using Visual Studio in C# you cannot turn off. So there's a story behind the tooltips. I am quite tooltip sensitive. So it might seem, you might think that was an overreaction. My celebration at having successfully turned off tooltips in Unreal here. But for me, it's a big deal. Anyway, so what was I doing? I'm exploring now. I've done that. I'm exploring another sub topic, which is just to understand a little bit about how the architecture of blueprints, because blueprints are, in the end, it's programming without typing. I really can't stress this enough, that blueprints is absolutely the same thing as programming, but without typing. And the problem with this is that typing is not what programmers are. We are not typists. We are logicians. So although you can throw the power of programming into the hands of people who are not programmers, using something like blueprints, I don't know if you can see where I'm coming from here, but if you're not a programmer and you do that, all that you've done is remove the typing. It doesn't mean you're going to think like a programmer, and it doesn't mean you'll make decisions like a programmer. And it turns out all of the issues of programming, style, coding, architecture, all of the difficult stuff about programming is all still very relevant with blueprints. So this is exemplified. There's a whole website, I think it's called Blueprints from Hell, with these big, ridiculous blueprints. And I look at that and laugh a little bit, because again, that hideous diagram, unintelligible mess of boxes linked by things in a web that is undecipherable, is a grand monument to the idea of not having to type. So when I'm looking at blueprints as a programmer, what I can see is lines of code. I mean, basically each one of these boxes is a line of code. But instead of them being sort of one after the other, they're in the end, with a complex one of these, they end up sort of scattered around in whatever order they happen to be. And it becomes impossible to follow what is going on. And because a lot of coding is done these days in blueprints, it's creating a huge amount of technical debt a lot of the time. Hey Gali, how you doing? And Joiga, however you pronounce your name, welcome. Gali, yeah, how you doing? Yeah, stream. And we do have Hal, but Hal, it's like in the film 2001, where all of the memory was removed. You know, all the modules were unplugged. From this angle, my beard looks sided. What's that? I think I need to do a bit of beard trimming. Yeah, sorry, I think you can tell I'm a bit scatterbrained at the moment. I think it's just the world situation. But anyway, what was I talking about? I was talking about, before the beard, I was talking about something that I've forgotten. This is... What is it? Are you in a late time zone? There was something I was thinking about, and I've completely lost my train of thought. What was that? It was from what I was reading. Oh, John Heisinger. How are you doing? Wow, been a while. yeah, I kind of just sort of like have distracted myself into. So what I'm going to do is reset, and we'll go back to blueprints and programming. So what I want to try and figure out here, as I look at this with the eye of a programmer, I'll have refly on. Eye of a programmer. But you see this white line. This white line is represents the program flow. So if you followed what I'm doing with Phi, I actually want to get rid of program flow. And so I've developed a language that doesn't have a program counter and has no control flow statements and so on. So it wouldn't have these white lines here, you see. But every time there's a tick, which is one frame of the game, it's going to execute these in along the white line. So what I'm going to get rid of this delay a minute. So it's quite good for demonstrating the realities of programming, kind of graphically, because you notice that we've kind of split here, because this white line is basically the execution flow, the program flow, and when it gets to this doesn't go anywhere, so it's kind of like a return. It just sort of stops executing what's in this graph. So the first thing on the event tick is this, and then it executes this. But what gets a little bit confusing is that, and it is actually interesting, is that this is a function. So where does this get executed? It's actually, this function is a cast. Functions need to have a program flow as well, but this is outside of the program flow. And what actually happens is that when this function test is created, it returns a string. And the string is converted into this other thing. It's a text. Okay, it's a text object. So it converts a string to text. So that then the result of that is then printed. It's a bit convoluted, isn't it? But it does actually represent the idea that you get with programming, but it's actually more complicated in a way, because if you were doing this in code, you would basically do print text and then call the function test, which is just a test function that returns a string. So, but basically you do it in one line. But here we've got all of this, and you can even do the cast in there in one line, and it just makes sense. It's like call test and we'll print what it returns. That's what this is doing, and I'm kind of curious as to how I could do this in a more elegant way, but I don't think I can. I think that's the way that you have to do it. It's a little odd. But the program flow stops here. So what I did was, well, let's see if this works, first of all. So I've done that, and I hit play. And down here, you can see that it's printing ha-ha. And that ha-ha comes from line 45 over here, which is like print ha-ha. Yes. I'm not saying that blueprints are useful. They are useful. In fact, I kind of think that there's a good balance to be had. And I do like the fact that you can modify and hit play and you don't have to recompile anything. This is actually really powerful and valuable. But, you know, it's this. And who decides how much? It's got to be your software architect. And if you don't have a software architect, that's another story. So you can see that, but this is successful in the fact that this function here, that's actually this. And I've got some commented out stuff here as I was just doing some experiments, but it sort of returns ha 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 ha, gets converted into this text thing, which is fed in to the print. The print prints it down here. I hit play and it does that. Now, what I did then was I was looking at this and going, well, the other thing that blueprints are good for is this. It's the delay. This is really interesting to me because this is magic. And when you're looking at programming languages and how they behave, very interested in this because it's time. And that's one of the themes of Phi actually as well, is that it's timeless. It gets rid of time. There is no time because there's no program count. As such, you wouldn't need something like a coroutine in Phi, because the language is reactive and immediately just copes. You know, waiting for something to happen is a first-class construct in Phi, built around waiting for something to happen as a kind of a way of thinking about it. So therefore, when you need to wait for something, it's just automatic. Everything is built out of waiting for something to happen. But waiting for something to happen in an imperative programming language is a whole nother matter, because there's this damn program counter. So how can I delay? This is what I'm going to do here. I'm going to try something here actually. What I'm going to do is take this, feed it into another text, print text, print string. Oh, you can print a string. Okay, well then that's nice. Then I don't need to do the conversion. Realize that. So maybe just try that a minute. Sorry, that's now another subtext here that I'm sub thing to look at. I guess if this converts a string to text, do not require this. I use the function print string. So, oh, look at this, and we have to do all of this, which was, by the way, I'll just point something out. This, what I just did there, it's like you've got this. I go, now watch this. I'm replacing this with this. There may be a fast way of doing this that I don't, but I can delete that. I go and do this, and do this, and do this, and that in code would be changing a word, the name of the function. You go in, double click on it, type in the new word, you're done. Anyway, so yeah, now I can do that. And so then test returns what I'm printing, and it gets sent into the print string, which is then printed. It then goes to delay. I put a delay in, then I print, well, hello. And so if we try this, this is actually going to be very interesting. Too interesting to just try all in one go. I want to try, and it'll be messy because this is getting called every frame. So what I'm going to try and do is go here and break that link, and instead feed it from here, because this is only going to be called once. Um, yes, I think probably Smalltalk is likely to be the closest thing to Phi. But I did try looking at it to see if there was a similar, where the similarities were, and it still felt like it had, it was still imperative in nature. Maybe I'm wrong. It had a program counter and control flow statement. So the experiment, and Lisp is a nice language. It's very nice as well. But Lisp also has, in effect, control flow. It tries not to, but then when you want to do, like if you look at Emacs Lisp, but I'm not sure how much that is a bastardized version of pure Lisp, but there's this prog n or program, and so then you can specify a sequence of instructions that are to be executed in a specific order. So essentially it becomes imperative again. But anyway, to come back to this, if I hit play, this will execute only once. So what I'd expect to see now is that it will execute my function, which returns ha ha. It prints that. So I should see in the log here, it should say ha ha. Then there should be a delay of 1 second. And after a delay of 1 second, it should print hello. Let's see if that works. Yeah, it did, right? So what you've got then is aha, and 1 second later, hello. If I make because this can get lost in the startup, let's just make that 2 seconds and it should be even clearer. Aha, hello. That's great. This is magic. Because as soon as you've introduced this, now it's behaving differently to your standard imperative languages. It is actually doing something similar to a coroutine. Because logically, I have called this once and then a delay. But everything, the world cannot stop while this delay is progressing. It cannot, this delay cannot freeze your entire program. This is not, that's not going to work, right? So what does where's the computer going? Where's the execution flow while this delay is happening? So what it's doing is it has to exit this under the hood to allow everything else to continue, and then 2 seconds later pick it up again. And this is the one thing, the ability to do this is the one thing that Blueprints has over C++. Because, well, at least up to now, because C++ doesn't have coroutine support. Sort of does now, or maybe will by the time that version of it's C++ 20 has support for coroutines properly, but you can using macros implement coroutines for the version of Unity, the version of C++ that Unreal's using, which I think is 14 rightly, by using lambdas, and it's quite a nice solution, but it's jumping through hoops, and the C++ language is still not 100% caught up with the idea of coroutines. It's and because of that, it's actually really, really hard to do this in pure C. So this pure C++, and this is something I think I would expect to see more commonly indicated. To do this in C++ requires jumping through hoops. Implementation of a coroutine system or some other virtual machine, because if you think about it, you're having to save the state of this execution thing I mean, we could make it worse. We could do this. Actually, let's try this, and then you'll see what pickle this represents. So what this is quite nice, actually. This is an education on the problems of continuations or coroutines or this topic in a graphical form. I hadn't really thought about using blueprints to actually show this. But can you see that this has generated the value, which is this ha over here, this thing. It generates it and then prints it, and then there's a delay. As I said, during this delay, everything else in the world needs to continue happening. And then eventually the delay is finished and execution has to mysteriously come back to here from somewhere. Who knows how it gets here, right? That's the architecture underneath. It has to have remembered this value. So with a coroutine, what happens is that you can return from a function in a way that that function can be then continued. And when it's continued, it has remembered the state that it was in. It's exactly this. So this is now a graphical representation, in fact, of a coroutine. Yeah, that noise, if you can hear that, it's a heater because it's cold up here. And so there's a heaters coming on. And I did set a, noise gate. I will seek to improve the audio. This is a different room and all the rest of it. So, okay. That's another reason why, for me, as I'm also exploring Unreal as, a tool for game development, sort of coming to it with, for the first time, ish, small amount of flight time. The fact that it's so easy to set this up compared to how difficult it is to set up a delay like this in straight C++ indicates a potential real value of blueprints. This is then actually beyond, because basically what I'm saying is, yeah, you could try coding this in C++, but it starts to become a tangle. And in fact, one of the motivations for Phi is to get rid of this tangle. But that's another story. I'm going to see if this works. It should work, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it did. It printed ha twice. I don't know if you can see that. Ha, and it prints ha again. And that's because it remembered, because this was only called once. I had to remember what this returned to use it again later. So this is actually, therefore, must be held in a variable. But you don't get to see it. It's kind of hidden away from you. So now this starts to get interesting, because what happens when we do this? I break the link test. So you see where this is. It's interesting. What does this do? Because now a new tick will happen. In fact, a very large number, at least 120 of these will fire off before this delay is finished. So I'm really curious to see, does each one of these that get fired off every frame all individually take 2 seconds before they finish coming through? I actually don't know. I'm going to guess that, yeah, you're going to end up with 120 delays running. And this is kind of also good to know, because if you're worrying about performance in terms of speed and also memory, this might be important. I mean, let's say that this thing here was attached to 1,000 entities in your mega level, and then someone in the project has done this. Okay, maybe somebody that isn't a programmer, and in doing this, then you have 1,000 of these running, and each one of those have 120, because it's a 2-second delay, and I'm assuming 60 frames per second. Each one of them has 120 of these. Suddenly your game is running 120,000 delays from something that looks really innocent. And then you're going, why is this game running slow? So that's anyway. I think that you will end up with them, or it's possible that it will generate an error, but I doubt it. I think it will just do it. The one thing is, all I see is a wall of ha-has. So that's not what I need to do. Is get rid of that. Need to remove that. Break the link here. So there it is, ha-ha and hello. Just to make this clearer, I'll just print a bunch of stars. Okay. So now we'll be able to see when it starts printing these. And I think they will start 2 seconds after you start seeing ha-has. But then when we have both going, it's like the multiple threads, because what you'll have is concurrently ha-has and stars, and they're going to have to be interleaved in some way. I imagine that there'll be one and then the other, but who knows? Depends on the way it schedules these delay things. We'll see. It's going to be interesting. Okay, so hit that. Ha-ha. Oh, that's not what I expected. That is not what I expected at all. And now this troubles me, because it tells me there is a fundamental limitation of this system in... I'm just processing the consequences of that piece of data. Yeah, what it means is it looks like you're only allowed to have one delay executing at a time for an object. Well, what's good about that is it avoids that scenario that I just described, prevents that from happening. But the bad side of it is it means that presumably you can't have...
Hello, Dino.
You can't have more than one delay going at a time, when that would be a severe limitation. I mean, that's gone to the other extreme now. You can only... So I didn't mean... This was not actually going to be the focus of what I was going to do, but this has become quite interesting, so I'm going to explore it a bit more. Yeah. It's... Yeah, Lacto, this... If every frame it was to create another delay, so we should end up with 120 of these executing, but I think it prevents more than one execution path ever running. So, but I want to know how does it do that? Because what is it that while this delay is happening, these ticks don't fire? You see what I'm saying? And so I'm going to do a test to see. Well, they do fire, actually. We can see they fire because it's printing the ha-has. So at what point... Yeah, Oh, sometimes you can hear that noise. You know what that is? That's actually, it might be, that noise was the ambient on the sample scene here. Let me open the volume mixer up. I realised. I've just turned off the sound in Unreal. Yeah, now we don't hear that anymore. um, yeah, because every frame it should be spawning, in effect, a new delay, but it doesn't. So what I think happens is execution arrives here, and because the delay is already running, the next request is ignored. It's not reset. It doesn't reset the timer, because if that happened, then you would never see these stars. Have I lost weight? Maybe a little. I have been trying to lose weight. So, so I think the rule is you're only allowed to have one of these at a time. Now, of course, because I'm a troublemaker, I want to understand, can I split? No, you can't split execution. I was saying, is there a way that would break this? Is there a way of firing two delays at the same time? Well, then we know where it went. Yeah, you're not allowed to do. You see, it switches. You can choose one or the other. This makes sense only because blueprints are fundamentally copying, imperative programming. You can't fork the program counter. You can't fork the execution path. Unless you're using, and in Unix, like the fork command. But that's doing, it spins up a whole nother process to run your thing in. You can't do two things at once. You can do, so it's actually impossible, therefore, to set up, because now I want to try and have two delays running at the same time, but it can't be done. So the conclusion, I think, is you're only allowed to have one delay per object, and if you try to do a second delay, it just ignores it. Hey, okay, Lacto. Take care. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciated. So yeah, you can't think if it's possible. No, I don't think it is. You can use a construct that oh, okay. If there are if the people who programmed or designed blueprints and they happen to be watching, they might get really irritated because I'm going to try and break the architecture. It's kind of well, I'm testing the architecture out. It's possible to branch it, because what I need to do is set up a variable and have an if, and then on the first delay, when it completes, it changes the variable, thus changing where the second event tick comes through. I know if you follow what I'm thinking. So, oh, this is getting interesting. I need to create a variable, so I can go over here, click variable. So we're going to make a flag. I'm going to fly the flag. And this is a set flag. I want to set the variable. Yeah, but I don't. Oh, and I set the variable on the begin. And the flag is clear. This is going to be interesting. I'm just going to, because I'm testing something else now, I'm going to get rid of this test thing because that was checking integration with C++. But what I can do is just print 1, and I'll just change that to 2. So we have 2 print statements. 2 print statements, and there's a delay, and we'll just check that first. 1 1 1 1, and then you can see just occasionally you get the 2 coming along. But what I'm going to do is when the delay, when it printed, after it prints the string, I'm going to do set flag. And so there it is. So what's going to happen now? You know what I'm going to do? Just again, it's going to be difficult to see what happens, understand what happens if I'm calling it every frame. So I'm just going to break that for a minute. Just test it this way first of all. So what happens here is that it clears the flag. It prints 1. It delays for 2 seconds, and then it prints 2, and it sets the flag. I'm going to check that that works. 1, 2 sec 2. Yeah, so I think that's good. But what's happened is it set the flag. Okay. If I connect that now and I run, we just get what we had before. I think 1 with the occasional flick of 2. Okay. But now, oh, made a mistake. Okay, so when we hit play, we clear the flag, and every tick we print 1, and then there was this delay. Now, what I'm going to do is put if, which is actually a branch. You use a branch here. And the branch changes the execute. It's really an if statement. It's an if-else, in effect, but for some reason they called it a branch. What I can do is get the variable. You know, you can create local variables though. I think there's an easier way of doing this than using these things, but I'll just use a get. So we can do card type get flag, get the flag. Oh, right. It's the get is simpler set. That's what's that goes into here. So now there's a condition on the flag. So when it comes through, if the flag is true, it does the delay. That's the wrong way around. So let's try it that way. This would be putting an exclamation mark in your if statement. But instead of just adding a single character, here we have to do all of this instead. Break link to, there we are. You know this, all go-tos are bad. This whole thing is nothing but a chain of go-tos. Go to, go to, go to, go to, go to. Madness. So if the flag is false, it will go into the delay and boom. If the flag is true, however, with branches. And so I'm going to try to, I can get it to print something else. So get it print 3. Really curious to see what happens here. But you see, that's the funny thing, is that we've had 50, 60 years of programming. We had structured programming, which is a form of imperative programming, which you had control statements to sort of reduce the need to use bare go-tos. So you've got your while, your if statement is one of those as well, actually. For loops, you know, continue, break, all of these things are basically decorations upon the go-to. And now if you program in blueprints, you see that the whole point of structured programming was to get around or away from what was called spaghetti code. The spaghetti code was the spaghetti you would get of jumps, your program counter, through the whole thing. And now, you know, with blueprints, we're all the way back to the beginning again, only now it's real spaghetti. I mean, it really is. This is spaghetti. It even looks like spaghetti. I'm just calling it as just calling it as it is. And there's no, I don't think there are any structured. Someone should do a course on structured programming in blueprints. There are some things actually that exist to try. But anyway, what I'm going to do is run this. So it prints 1 on every tick. It prints 2 at the end of the delay. Where's the ban button? UML. I'll tell you a story about UML and being a teacher. I never liked UML. So when I was teaching video game programming, I really did not teach UML. But fortunately, when I was a teacher, we had the opportunity to choose the particular things that we wanted to focus on. You know, at least as it was at the time. You know, and so if we wanted to, in our course not to teach UML, we could not teach UML. Unfortunately, some of the students had come from a background where they'd had some kind of introduction to the topic of programming and so on, where UML was a thing that was obviously mentioned, because the UML is basically an aid for confusing people that you're teaching how to program. I'm being very naughty and cheeky with this, but it may not be the intention, but it is actually the effect of it. And so I remember once there was being asked, well, you should teach us UML, and my heart just sank. It's like, UML. And in fact, I believe that UML is pretty much out of fashion now. UML is a great way to, maybe a great way to talk about programming. It may be useful in teaching programming concepts, but maybe, but as an actual tool for software architecture, what I was tend to focus on, you know, but it's still out there. Okay, UML. Unsightly misrepresentative labeling. Yeah, that's UML. I'll go with that. Yeah, and I'll move on. You know, but look, the problem is that we've already got a representation of code. You know, it's called the programming language. So really, UML is just a variation of trying to avoid typing. It's not really, but it is sort of. It's like, well, it is actually. It's like you can build a model of your software without having to type much. But what you end up with is, if the system that you're working with is at all complicated, you just end up with an undecipherable graph. So in fact, actually, it's a good question, Mike, because it's basically the blueprinting of software architecture, and where blueprints is actual code. I'll get back to this. So what should happen is what I should do is every frame it's going to print 1, and after 2 seconds it will print 2. But what gets interesting is that while it's waiting for a 2, it should print 3. Let's see. Right, that actually worked. Look at that, it's exciting. So what happens there? It prints 1. I can pause. So I'm pausing. So currently I'm within the 2 second period of this delay. Within the 2 second period of this delay, and it's printing 1 every time, which is absolutely correct. No. Yes, it is correct, because the flag has not been set yet. The flag will only be set after the 2 seconds. So for the whole 2 seconds, when I start, this remains false. But what's happening then is, in theory, it's recalling this delay. But that's where the behavior is not quite what I expected. I'm going to have to change the graph a little to do what I want. But it's going to then, at the end of the 2 seconds, it flips the flag. And when it flips the flag, it sets this to true. And from then on, every time it calls the thing, it should be printing 3. But it's also printing 1, because it prints 1 and then 3. So what we should see is that you wait 2 seconds and then you've got 1, 3. Okay, right. So that was correct. But actually not quite what I intended, because what I intended was that when it's about to fire off a delay, because I'm trying to get it to do 2 delays at the same time. That's basically what I'm trying to mischievously achieve here. Great link to this. So what I'm going to do, and I think it's possible to do this. No, can't you just put it in there? Can you just, no, it's like in an editor, you just put this between 2 lines. I hit enter and okay. Oh, the effort. So I've added my line of code. And so the false, if it's false, it sets it to true, then there's a delay. Now what I should expect to see is it will always be printing this 1. Then after the 1, it should print nothing the first time because it's gone into the delay, but it has set the flag so that the next time it prints a 1, that should be followed by a 3. And eventually this delay will finish and it will print a 2. But just to make this clear, because it's only going to print it, I think, for like 1 frame, it's going to put a series of stars in that one. Let's see. Yes, it worked, but of course what's interesting is, well, what I'll do is I'll hit that and pause, and then we can check the behavior at the beginning. Oh god, if I can scroll it to them. I need some DevOps here. Oh, there we go. Look, it's 113 because as predicted, the first time that it goes through, it'll print 1 only because it comes, this is false. It sets the flag to true and then it does the delay. Okay, so that's good. Then it carries on doing this until eventually the timeout. So when the timeout happens, when the delay is finished, it prints these rows of stars. But of course, the flag is set so it never restarts the delay. Yeah, exactly. It was DevOps. This is for me as DevOps is have a way of making the output log clear automatically when I press play. That's DevOps. I have sometimes spent half a day trying to solve a DevOpsy thing like that, which was slowing me down. And then afterwards, life goes a lot easier. But it's no joke, you know. If you have to sit there all day doing this. But anyway, so here, this is already growing, isn't it? My God. It's about 1, 2, 3, 4. It's about 3 lines of code, I think, at the moment. So because it never resets the flag, this never gets re-triggered, and now I can do the mean and devious thing that I've been wanting to do, is force 2 delays at the same time. That's the idea. So I feel like I'm almost doing particle physics now, isn't it? It's like the wave-particle duality question. I'm trying to split the photon into 2 paths. I take my second delay and I go poof, like that. Maybe a little less volume on it though. It's a bit loud. And so what should happen here is the first time through it starts this delay, and the second time through it starts this delay. And we go into here, and then we go boom to there, and this is, I'm going to put ats in this one. Like so. So we have stars, and we've got stars, and we've got ats. So the first time it's going to do stars, and the next time it's going to do, well, whatever. What do I think will happen? So one thing that's very interesting to note is that you can, while you're in the delay, you get this weird thing where they're in effect almost like 2 threads. Because you've got it sort of hanging in the delay, and yet you can do other stuff at the same time. I'm pretty sure that this is not what they designed blueprints for, but what I have now is first time it will, I'm just reviewing it. So the first time it starts this delay, which will print stars. The next time in, it's going to come here and it's going to fire this off, but it's going to continually fire this one off. And what I think will happen is, if only one delay is allowed per object, that this will be ignored because this was running. There is another possibility, and that is you are allowed to have multiple delays, but each individual delay cannot be, is ignored. So there's a possibility here, and the behavior is interesting to see which it is. So basically, it's like, are these the same delay, sort of? Is it the same delay code and can only be used once per object, or can we have two delays within one object if they are on if they're a different instance of a delay? I don't know. We'll see. Let's run it and see what happens. So I've got one, and oh, I think we have the answer, and the answer is interesting, valuable. You can have two delays. That's really nice. Because that means that it is possible to, is it? Oh, this is very interesting. Because it means theoretically it's possible to create threads. If you think about it, I've got two separate delays going at the same time. They both worked. And one fired one frame after the other, which is correct because one was started one frame after the other. So therefore, I take that as reading that both delays were in fact functioning. So what I'm going to do, excited about this. This is like forensic spaghetti analysis. PSA. Right. Let me stop this. The dangers of this. Break that. Leave that off. I'm not printing one anymore. So then what we have is, oh, come on. DevOps. All right. So what we have there is a delay, and then it prints both. There's actually a one frame delay between the first and the second one of those. And then, because now it's always the the second delay, the at delays, that it's always going to be trying to restart. So that makes sense. That's why this is got a 2-second delay between instances here. I'm very curious though about the timing of this. The way I want to understand how this flow actually works. One thing that could help with that is that we stop firing these off every frame and only do one. Actually, let's make it a little bit easier to work with, I think, do the test. So if I put this into here like that, and I break that link. Now what we have is, I'm doing most of the work in this It's funny actually. I'm doing most of the work in this window and not in. So maybe it might make sense for me to just put this into here. I wasn't intending to work so much in blueprints. There you can see it perhaps better. So if I hit play on this, in the thing here, we can see that after a delay I get stars, but I never see this, and that's because this never gets called again. But what I want to do is see if I can do this from one call. It might not be possible. Well, feels like it should be possible to create a an internal loop and do what we like. Oh. Yeah, I'm going to try a little another experiment. I wonder if I can break this. Can I break this and then take this whole thing and sort of push it up here, and then just hit play? No, it doesn't create any errors, so that's fine. That's good. That's useful because I can keep that around. I'm going to, instead of using this event tick, I'm going to try an experiment where I create, in effect, my own tick by creating a loop with a delay. So this is going to go into a delay. And then let's put the delay of 1 second. And from the output of this, we want to go this will print 1, and then this goes back to here. And you can tell that doing loops in blueprints is obviously frowned upon because you can't see the loop. Maybe you can do this. Yes, that's quite ugly. But what will happen? What should happen if I hit play is that I should get it printing out a number. What? Hal just did something. I'm not sure what Hal did. What did Hal just do? Hal thought I said turn on heater. Heater was already on, or maybe the heater was off, and the AI is getting uncannily clever. So yeah, what's happening there is this cat gets called once, but then there's a delay of 1 second, and it prints, and it feeds back into the delay. So what I've got here is a little tick generator, in effect. And so now, can I feed the output of this tick generator to another delay? So I can, if I do a similar thing to what I did up there, I guess. I can drag the flag here? No. No. Oh, it's because I was running. There we go. I can do a set flag. And set this flag and then go back and take the output of the flag, put it into a knot, take the output of the knot and put it into the flag. How pretty is that? That's really pretty, isn't it? Sarcastic here, but it's like this now toggles this flag. So what I'm going to do is go from here to a branch. Where I take the flag. So this is like a pump. It goes around. The sky is falling. Maybe you can pick up some of it for cheap then. Sell it for a profit later. How you doing, Crafty? And so it's like, all right, so I'll put it in there. Oh, this is an interesting one. Well, I can feed it. Right. Yes. I'm going to just do this first of all, which looks very odd. But basically, this is flipping between one and the other of these. However, it's not doing anything just yet. But I do have two separate paths. Perhaps it might make more sense than if I do a 1 and a 2. I'm fine. I'm fine. This is my first time streaming in like over a year. Or is it a year and a half? It's in a while, in quite a while. 2 years. I don't even remember. This goes into here. So now, depending on which one, because it's flipping from one to the other, that, it can print 1 or 2, and then it comes back to there. So, is that clear? How's this? Is this a? Yeah, it's good spaghetti, isn't it? I think Italian programming spaghetti has a certain thing. So there you can see it's printing 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2. So what I've actually got then is 2 execution kind of streams, this one or this one. And I can make the delay. I'm just going to try making this delay 0. because in theory, if the delay was really 0, then it would mean that this would be an infinite loop. So it's probably got a limit of 1 frame. Should we go? I'm going to save this because this might actually lock things up. It doesn't lock anything up. We can see 1 2 1 2 1 2, and it's probably printing one per frame. To verify if it's doing that, because it's a bit, how do we know? Well, what I could do is print a 3 on every tick, just lines on every tick. That's it. Just a kind of, you'll see what I mean. And then by doing that, I have a way of knowing when there's a new frame starting, like so, right? Then I can hit play, and we'll see what happens. Hello, there we go. Yep, it prints 1, and then so even though the delay is a 0, it's actually like a yield for 1 frame. So this means that you can use the delay as the equivalent of yield return null, theoretically.
Hello, Dino.
Yeah, hi, Hal. Yes, I have to admit I'm enjoying this mischievous exploration here. So, okay. What would be great is if I could get it to print 1 and 2 in the same frame, but that's not possible because this will always go to another frame. There's no way I have 2 execution paths, but they necessarily are going to be one path on one frame, the other path on the other frame. One that prints the 1 and the one that prints the 2. There's no way of getting it to print 1 and 2 in the same frame on 2 different execution threads, paths. I think this makes sense. So what's the summary? I mean, if I fire this off every frame with a delay, any thought of AI and our future merge with them allobial blues? Any thought of AI and our future merge with them allobial blues? This is a troubling statement. Troubling because I'm struggling a little bit to understand it. Oh, right. Okay. You know what I was going to do? I was beginning to suspect that in fact you are an AI, crafty, and this was an attempt at. I don't look at that. This was an attempt at. So let's just see what happens. AI team names. The second list in here, someone called John Mayer. AI, Artificial Intelligence 2001. Interesting. Any thought of AI and our future I love your blues. I mean, it doesn't help that much. It's still, I'm not quite sure what you're asking. Thought of AI and our future. I think you mean any thought of AI and our future merge with them. I love your blues. Yeah, well, here's something that could bake your noodle. Tell me what artificial means. What's the definition of artificial? It's like if I breathe out, is that artificial breath? Because it was created by me. I make my breath. Is it artificial breath? So that's the point, isn't it? It's like what does why do we choose to make a distinction of? I mean, AI. If AI was something that was human made, and we merge with it, are we just not merging with ourselves? That's a philosophical thing. It's difficult to say. It's a philosophical question. There's no. It's like, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I think there's a huge danger in it, and that's that we become more machine-like. But we don't need technology to see how we become more machine-like. We've been becoming, as a species, more machine-like, even without technology. It's a trend that has been going on for a very long time, where we reduce our experience to something that we can describe in words, that we live in our conscious mind, and that if we can't hold it in our conscious mind, we don't. There's a tendency for us to treat it as though it's not important or not real if it cannot be held in our conscious mind. And that is actually becoming more like a machine. Because the thing that differentiates a human being from a machine is that a machine executes, in effect, a pattern, an algorithm. It does the same thing over and over again, and doesn't really grow. What gets interesting is that you can argue that neural networks break that rule a bit. It's still a kind of machine, but it's become so complicated. It's so that nobody understands how it works. When you train a neural net, people train neural nets all the time. Obviously it's the way that AI, but nobody really understands how it works. They understand the pattern that you can create, software that creates the effect that you want. But if you try and analyze a neural network to understand how it works, you just don't know. It could be, therefore, that AI actually saves humanity from a fate of becoming like machines. It could be that we become the machines, and the AI become we become the artificial. In a world, in an immeasurable amount of time in the future, if we are still here, then it's conceivable that the whole thing just flips around, and we are the product of machines, and the machines consider themselves to be natural, and we're considered to be artificial. Well, I think I think it's I've become very cynical about many things, and cynical about myself, probably most of all. It's like, yeah, it's this thing
Hello, Dino.
yeah, hi, Al. It's a thing I've struggled with. It's like this idea that when you look at the way in which increasingly human beings fall into patterns of rhetoric politically, they fall into patterns of behavior that are repetitive. They, and I've done it too. I mean, getting hooked on social media, the whole, you know, oh, I got another like, that kind of looking for the likes, and it's very common. Everybody seems is doing that and does that, but it's actually more machine-like, isn't it? It's like this happens, you respond. There's the troll, you respond. The troll responds to you like a machine, and you respond to the troll like a machine, and it's just like, well, the things that we watch, the things that we do, they feel like they're dictated more and more by accepted patterns of behavior. It's like you've got to choose which side you're on. You can be on the left, you can be on the right. If you're on the left, you're supposed to say certain things, and if you're on the right, you're supposed to say certain things. It's like it's important to choose a side, and it's important that people can recognize which side you're on. The reality is that's what's important in society for some reason. Great importance is put onto that. This is why you don't get half and half very often. You don't get you don't often find people who take the good bits of the left and the good bits of the right and sort of say, let's do that. There are some that do, and there are people who are in the centre. And that's the funny thing, is that the real enemy of the majority, it often feels, are the people in the centre. Because they're not playing the game. It's like, come on, you got to pick a side. What do you mean that you want to sort of, try to take the best of socialism and the best of capitalism and you can't do that. You got to pick a side. And everything is like, but the thing is if we have to pick a side and we just reduce our analysis of the world and our view of the world to left or right, that's always puzzled me. It's like left or right. Come on, there's so much, such a richness of possibility. There's such depth to existence. It's never ending. Are we really going to simplify it to left or right? Well, but that's what happens. Democracies, you end up almost invariably with left or right, or whatever you want to call them, Republicans versus Democrats. It's uncanny how it's always about 50-50. How do they do that? I'd love to know. How is it kept? It's like Brexit. It's like down to a few percent. It's like, seriously, what's the probability of that? What's the chance of that? And it's like a machine. And it really wouldn't matter too much, but it seems that in the process of living this machine is stamping on our world and our environment, and it's destroying the things that sustain us. Not just the things that sustain us in terms of the ecology, but there are many ecologies. Music, which I'm very passionate about, is like an ecological system of its own. You can almost think of like the songs that are created. They spread through humanity, and who's to say that they aren't an entity in themselves? I mean, you can say, well, what are they? Well, it's just data. It's just, I don't know, emotion. It's what is it? does it matter? It's something that has an effect. And so, you know, if we spend a lot of our time, I mean, for pity's sake, you know, I spent most of my life working video games. So what are video games? Oh, they're not real. Really? Are video games not real? I mean, at a certain point, if you put yourself into an environment over and over again, at what point, you know, surely there comes a point where it becomes meaningless to say it's real or it's not real. So it's like, okay, this thing, what you've got is as a song is written, and people hear the song and then they sing it to other people, even before there was, you know, the ability to record it. It was spread throughout the population. Is there really any difference between that and an animal that spreads? This was the pattern that we have in life. Everything, ideas that spread, you know, and so, and just like all the life on the planet that spreads, and we have all this wonderful life, all these different, amazing species that, you know, are unfortunately a lot of them in danger of becoming extinct, right? And then look at music. It's the same thing. You've got all this wonderful different kinds of music that exist in the world, and but it's all getting distilled down, isn't it? To it's not all that bad, because there's some ways, some of the good stuff is coming back. But you know my point. It's like with pop music and so on, and it's like every song is going to sound the same. Music for people that are machines would be music that has very little variation to it, that it's pretty much the same thing and you consume it. It's like, that feels like machine, right? Whereas as life feels like variety, you know. And I see it as very connected. In fact, I think these things are all related. It's no coincidence that at the same time that we're destroying our environment, we're also destroying our appreciation of music. Yeah. They're both dying in their own way, right? Oh man. Sorry, I should get back to. You see, did you bring up philosophy with me, and I wander off? I'm just going to read the thing on there. Who's to say we're real? What do we really know? Humanity is problematic. I don't know. It's humanity. Well, I think the best way to think of it is that it's a game. We're all playing a game. This is the kind of like the Hindu view of the universe, and we really shouldn't take it so seriously, because the reason being that by taking it seriously, we actually kill it. It's kind of an inevitable reaction to taking it too seriously. It doesn't mean what I mean. Some of this stuff is thank you, Alan Watts, for, you know, he's a brilliant guy. If you want to listen to this stuff, this kind of stuff, right? I've been inspired quite a lot by Alan Watts. Go listen to Alan Watts, because of all the people who talk about philosophy, he's like was a popular philosopher, but he was really on point, just so incredibly on point on so many things. And you know, you can start making sense of the nonsense that is reality. Well, one of the things that he said, which I found incredibly helpful, is he pointed out the distinction between seriousness and sincerity. And I would say that's probably one of the best gifts. One of his best gifts is sincerity and seriousness. And one should live. I think one should live one's life. Very hard to do, but in a manner that is completely sincere. Everything that you do is sincere, but not serious. In fact, you've got 4 different ways you can live life from this. It's kind of interesting because you could be sincere and serious. And so that's a certain kind of is sincere and serious. They really say what they mean what they say, but it's very serious. What does that mean anyway? Serious. It means it's like rigid, I suppose. It means like whatever it is, we know. You kind of know. We know for now. Maybe in 100 years, humanity won't know anymore. But for now, there is serious and not serious. So you could live your life but seriously and sincerely, or you can live your life seriously but unsincerely. Now that's got a kind of another feel to it altogether, isn't it? It's like serious but insincere seriousness. That feels like it's manipulative. That feels like not being entirely honest, but taking everything really seriously. I'm not sure that that's a really good way to live for me, but it seems like there's a lot of people who live that way, and maybe they can cause a lot of trouble. I don't know. You tell me what you think, right? But an example of that would be hypocrisy in war, which a lot of war has hypocrisy in it. But that would be, it's not actually that sincere because there's a hypocrisy about it, but it's deadly serious because lives are at stake. Yeah, I suppose you could have which one's next? You'd have a sincere, whatever the opposite of not serious. Sorry, a sincere, an insincere. We could have an insincere unseriousness, right? So that just feels like completely chaotic. It's like, let's have fun and really not give a damn. That feels like not caring. That feels like checking out, doesn't it? If it's insincere and not serious. And then I think I've covered them all. The last one is the sincere but not serious. And that's probably the best one. It's probably the best place to be, because if you're sincere, you mean what you do. You do what you do with care. You do what you do because it feels right. You think about what you do. Sincerity implies values, implies some of the good stuff, right? There's a lot of good stuff that's there that you can have that is not tied up with seriousness. And so by that you can live your life with care, but also with lightness. And that's probably the right place to be, but that domain is not where humanity is heading. It feels like it's heading right now, especially what you've seen in the political landscape in the last couple of years, the last 4 or 5 years especially, is this build-up of insincere seriousness. And that's sad. So I try, it's very hard, but I try to be sincere and not serious. But we're kind of programmed a little bit, aren't we? We're programmed to think that not being serious means that you're kind of letting the side down in some way. Unless you're a comedian, where you have a serious job. you have a serious job in cheering everybody up. That's very important thing to do. Yeah. Well, there's thanks, Mike, but I'm really just I'm really just interpreting Alan Watts. So go check him out. Honestly, he said things that they're like, oh my god, yes, he's so right. I hadn't thought of it that way. It's like, you know, the whole thing. Sorry, you've got me going now. But you know the whole thing about kind of there are some cliche views of certain groups that we've had in society. For example, like the hippie. So a hippie character might the whole thing of, oh wow, I can feel the whole world type of thing, which has become like a joke. And certainly that thing can be insincere. Right? You can have that insincere because it was drug induced, for example. You could argue that that's perhaps not sincere, and it tends to get dismissed, right? And it's just like, oh yeah. But there's a wonderful point here that was missed. I don't know if you've ever heard about the idea that when somebody becomes enlightened, in the kind of Buddhist tradition, enlightenment, they get this sense that everything in the world is interconnected. Now, I kind of have heard that through the years. Everybody's heard this type of thing, and it's quite easy to dismiss it and say, wow, what? Yeah, and it always gets labelled. It's always ready to be labelled. It's like, that's New Age claptrap and all of that. And often the way it's presented is claptrap. And it's confusing, because I would hear that and I would hear it and I'd feel there's something in that, but it's totally illogical, Captain. It's like, I feel drawn to it, but it's gobbledygook. Everything is not connected. Believe it or not, he solved it for me. Because when you realise this, it's just like, it's amazing. And it's all down to the question of where we draw the line. It's like, where does anything end and something else begin? Anything. Like, where does the atmosphere of Earth end? That's a great one. Where is the end of the Earth's atmosphere? And you say, well, look it up. First thing people do, they go to Wikipedia, they'll look it up and they'll say, and they'll find it, and it's there, and it said, yeah. But the point is that as you get further away from the planet, the atmosphere thins out. So you've got to pick a point where you say, it's the end of the Earth's atmosphere. Because technically, you could go as far as outside of the solar system. And you may well find a stray atom or two that came from planet Earth. So if that's the case, it means that the choice of where the atmosphere ends of planet Earth is a convention. We choose where it's useful for us to say that the atmosphere of planet Earth ends. And this might seem like a philosophical nitpicking, but it's a little bit more than that, because it means that if that's the case for where the atmosphere ends in planet Earth, you can realize that it's actually true of everything. That the way what we do, for very good reasons, and it's very useful. I mean, otherwise we wouldn't be able to talk about anything. We wouldn't be able to do anything. We wouldn't have any grip on reality. We wouldn't be able to have conversations. At least not the way that we know it. We wouldn't be able to build technology, etc. But what we do is we take the world and we cut it into pieces and we label it. And where the dividing line is just a convention. When somebody is a boy versus a man, or a girl versus a woman, when does that happen? It's a convention. Where is the end of my finger? This one seems to be very clear, right? It's here. Yeah, but this depends on the definition of finger. It's like, what we do is we construct a model of the world that is defined in terms of itself and specifies the limits of things as a convention. And that is the actual meaning of the thing of, oh, well, we're all interconnected. We're all the same. We're all the universe. That thing that has become a cliche and is difficult to grasp is a lot easier to grasp when if you rephrase it and say, the things that divide any person from the rest of the universe is only a convention. Yeah, and that's it. And that was pretty mind-blowing, because at that point I kind of realised that it ticks all the boxes, because it's like intellectually absolutely sound, it makes absolutely complete sense, and it's very useful, because it means that you should always question the assumptions in things. So we assume that things are the way they are, and then we base a lot of the way that we look at the world upon those assumptions, and that there are assumptions in all the words and the language that we have. So in the whole thing, and he goes into all of this better than I will go into it, but it's like the whole thing about Zen, right? It's like, what is Zen? And in the end, Zen is getting rid of the hang-up of language. If you really want to boil it down, as I understand it, that's what Zen is. It's getting rid of the hang-up of language, so that you can be free and be spontaneous and use your full faculties to make decisions without getting hung up. And when you hear the expression of overthinking things, so what's really happening then is you're trying to do too much with your conscious mind instead of trusting your whole self, right? For example, as I'm talking to you now about this, as I'm saying this, why am I off on this? Is because of what was it's in the chat. But where did these words come from? Do you think I'm putting them together? So is there a part of me that's putting these words together, sort of in a kind of an assembly line, and then they just come out of my mouth like this? It's like, it's. I can tell you, it's absolutely not a case of me constructing the words as I speak, and it's the case for everybody, pretty much. I think it might seem like that, and you might be hearing them like that, but it's just coming from my whole self. It's like it is relying on the subconscious. The things that you do, they bubble out of your subconscious as well. That felt good, actually. I enjoyed that. Let me just check the chat, and then I'll go and. Mm-hmm. Oh, are you talking about how we're limited to how we see? Yeah, we can limit the way we see things because of the abstractions that we use to hold the things that we see in our conscious minds, if that makes sense, right? Because there is this idea that if you are not thinking consciously, then you're not really alive. Okay, if you understand what I mean. It's like we define ourselves through our thinking. We can do. But the actual reality is that you can not be thinking, not in the language way, right? And you don't, when you do that, you don't disappear. You're still there. You know, it's like you haven't died because you've quietened the chatter, and it's specifically the chatter with language. So this is one of the things with meditation purpose is to actually move into the space where you're feeling and observing and being in an environment, and you're doing that without analyzing it, without breaking it into words. It's basically turning off that analytical thing. The way I look at it is that analytical thing is basically chopping everything up. It's creating the boundaries between things. And so this, and I'll leave it at this point, this is why it's no coincidence, I think, that the way that society has gone, and it keeps going and keeps returning to, is division. Why is it that we get, if you look at what a lot of the conflicts that occur in the world are about, they're about division. You know, this race, this religion, that religion, this socio-economic group, that socio-economic group, people who believe in this political or this economic system, people who believe in that economic system, right? People who think that PlayStation is best and people who think that Xbox is best. People who think that kickoff is best, people who think that sensible soccer is best. You know, division. And if we can do that in society, if we can divide our society, we can divide ourselves. So that's what people don't realise. We block everything off, we split everything up because we've just we're putting everything in labeled boxes, you know, and if it doesn't fit too well, we just sort of cram it in. And but what we're doing is we're creating division. This is totally logical. This is why I think this is not new age what I'm talking about. This is absolutely logical. That's what we do. That's what happens with language. When you label something, you have kind of created a divide, a line, a plane. On one side of this plane, it is that object with that label, and then the other side it isn't, whether that's you, them and us, male or female, you know, country, another country. The countries are just lines on a map. It's the same thing. Division. So if we actually want to really work together, there's lots of talk a lot of the time about how people need to work together, and if we really mean that, then what we have to do is stop with barriers. We have to take the barriers away. And that means taking the labeling away. And this is why it's actually really important that careless use of language in labeling people is actually really important. And it's the whole thing about being PC. There's actually a reason why it's important, because if you carelessly label, well, you can see that you're just creating more and more division. And a careless labeling of things, it's like splitting glass. It just sort of breeds more division. And when we divide ourselves, then they can't achieve anything. In fact, what happens is it's like if you start carving up the cells of your body. You know, it's because we're all on the same spinning ball. at the end we end up damaging everything through this careless division. And there we go. Sorry, I can't get off this. But I just believe it. And it's not new age claptrap. This is that's why I recommend Alan Watts, is because then you start to see that there was actually something to this, and it got lost, as so often happens. So there you go. I'm going to just check the chat again, and then I'll try and get back to the topic. Believing nothing, yeah, that's a whole nother topic, and he talks about that as well. I mean, you know, the whole thing about atheism, and it kind of it misses the point a little bit. I think what we did was we killed God because that wasn't working for us. But what we replaced God with was a dumb universe. and the whole universe is a machine. And so, you know, that whole thing about God created humanity in his own image, right? Now I kind of wonder, are we creating a mechanistic humanity because we believe in a mechanistic universe? The irony of humanity saying or thinking that the universe is entirely dumb and we're the exception. It's like, can you tell me how that works out? Everything in the universe is dumb matter. Everything in the universe is dumb matter, except humanity. Humanity is the exception, because we're not just machines, and of course that doesn't work. That logically that doesn't fit together. I mean, it feels like there's some hypocrisy going on there. One way to solve it is just to make us all machines, and then we'll be all fine. It will be all absolutely okay, and it would make absolute sense. So that's the kind of like the double-edged sword of the thing here, isn't it? So I don't know about you. I think I prefer to believe in a not dumb universe, and put my evidence that the universe is not dumb in that it created us. It gave birth to us. I mean, you know, this is another thing. We didn't just sort of get plopped here. We grew out of the universe. So I would like to think that it's quite likely that if we are more than machines, the universe is more than a machine too. I rest my case. Well, what I'm doing is I got majorly distracted into philosophy, and so now you know that's the danger. But I enjoyed it, and fair enough. What I'm doing here is I was trying to see if I could play with delays to sort of like create threads, and in doing so exploring the behavior and the way that this delay thing behaves, because that's a tricky thing to implement. And what I found so far is it looks like when you do a you cannot call the same delay block again while it's delaying. While it's in a delay, it basically ignores any attempt to re-execute it. But you can have multiple delays. So what I was going to try now is to put a second more delays in and see what happens. Yeah, but yeah, machines are smarter. What does that mean? Give me the definition of your words. What does it mean to be smarter? And can you find me a machine that can answer that question? Oh dear. Philosophy is fun. Now, well, philosophy should be fun. Okay, so what happens here is that one frame it executes one path, the other frame executes another path, and we can therefore can we have two? I suspect that whatever happens, you only ever get one piece of spaghetti executing at a time. There is a point. There is something I'm kind of searching for here, and I think it's that. It's like, in one frame, can there ever be two branches executing? And I think the answer is no. I mean, there is the question of what happens when you chain delays. I'm going to try one more experiment here. But this is definitely going in a loop. So even though it's this only gets called once, right? This is looping by itself all the time. But every frame, one frame, every time it gets into here, it does a yield, and it comes back the next frame. So if I'm in frame 2 here and it comes in, I'll be in frame 3 when it comes out. Then it chooses this branch, prints that, and then again there is a delay to the next frame. So each time it comes out of here, this is the equivalent of doing an event tick. So basically what it means is that if I wanted, I can avoid using an event tick by actually putting a delay of 0 in here, and then this will run every frame. Every frame it comes out of here, I could feed this into another one. If I fed it into another one, then I end up with a chain of like yields. Okay, boom, 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 boom. But I don't think there's ever a way of splitting it. There's no way I can make it branch within a frame. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. What I'm going to do is break the link here. Park that there. Wonder if anybody else is sort of using delays of 0. I mean, the usefulness of it. Well, there can be things which are useful about this, but I can make a chain of 0 length delays. But of course I need something to happen in between these chains. So let's do a print. And it's going to print the number 1. Go from there to there. There to there. There to there. And there to there. Now we got number 3. and then let's do one more jump off. Oh, I had done a 3 and I see 2. What happened to 3? In 3, you can get this. Oh, there. And then after that, we just make it loop all the way back to here. So what I've got is equivalent. Each one of those delay zeros is in effect a yield. If I run this, what I should expect to see is it printing 1, 2, 3 in a loop. If I'm right. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, the reason is because I put that's where the 3 came from. I put it in the time. Right, let's try that again. I thought it wasn't a 0. So you see, and that's worked. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So within this object, it's like first frame, it does this. Then the next frame, it does this. And then the next frame, it does that. That's a coroutine. No, this is good. It means that there's a way, and I hadn't really considered this, but it means that there's a way of, well, it makes sense. There's a way of waiting for, you can use this to wait for something to happen. So I'm going to actually just try a little experiment like that. But what you can't do is spawn another coroutine. I mean, you know, you can't just start a new coroutine within a coroutine, for example. So what I could do is, I've got this flag up here. I can say, okay, let's do a branch. Okay, branch. And we'll go to the delay. Break that, that's it. And this comes straight back into the branch. So this little construct here is an asynchronous wait. Because it's going to sit there, and every frame it just checks for this condition. And if I take the flag, I can do get and into the condition. This will start executing. Print string. Now, this is really useful, because when I'm using Unity, it's a key component of architectural solutions, is to set something up to wait for something to happen. For example, wait for a message over the network. Classic is, yeah, it's like you're going to read a web page. Problem with reading a web page is that it's going across the network. Because it's going across the network, it takes time, and you really don't want to be sitting there and waiting for it. You don't want everything to lock up. While it's reading the web page, what you really want to do is send out the request, have the web page come in, and then be notified when it's ready, for example. And this kind of stuff is actually can get gnarly. If it's only one page you're doing, it's not a big problem. But if you start having to do many things like the login sequence or to a back end or something more complex, it starts getting quite convoluted. I had this problem, for example, with Kickoff Revival on the PlayStation 4, because it had to sort of connect to the back end of Sony servers and all that. And to make that work with the UI, there's so many exceptions and cases it had to deal with that I think we ended up with a third incarnation of the architecture for it. And the reason we didn't get it right first time is because there was very limited time available. But in retrospect, it would have been better to have taken it a more slow and steady approach right from the start. But yeah, you live and learn. When you're under pressure to ship, it can be tricky to make those decisions properly. And that is even when we had coroutines. What we did in the end was we created a component. It's called it's like a controller type. I can't remember the name we used for it. Like coordinator, but it wasn't a coordinator. So anyway, the point with this was it had awareness of the entire state of the communications with the back end and the state of the game. So it had eyes on everything, and then was able to officiate when events happened. So it could take an event would happen like, oh, we've lost internet, like the cable has been unplugged, or the user has pressed the cancel button, right? And these events that had to be treated asynchronously come in to this thing, and it could then make a call on what to do by observing the whole state. And that that code to do that was complicated, but it was going to be complicated because it's a complicated problem. It's like, what happens if you are trying to match make and the user unplugs the cable, the network cable, in the middle of matchmaking and then presses the cancel button? You couldn't say, well, why do we need to test for that? Well, you need to test for that because Sony tests for that. And then if you fail the test, then they can prevent you from shipping. And it turns out that it's really difficult to deal with. Because the things that are looking after, if you create something to look after unplugging the network cable, and you look for something, you create something that looks after cancellation, the problem is that they are unaware of each other. And so it becomes a real tangle, because it's like, well, does the thing the module that's concerned with cancellation from the user, are they supposed to check all the different sort of states? Like, we better make sure before we actually initiate the cancel protocol, we better make sure that the network cable was not unplugged first. Is that the responsibility of the code that handles the cancel, or the code that handles the unplugging the network cable is supposed to check whether a cancel just happened like a frame before or is in the process? because none of these things happened instantly. So it's like you press cancel, it wasn't an immediate cancel. We had to wait. You have to wait for the server to get back to you. And of course, you're waiting for the server to get back to you, and they unplug the network cable before we get the reply. How do we handle that? It's like, yeah, it's a nightmare. And in the end, the only way to reliably do it is that you have a kind of a brain that sits there and, like a maitre d' or something. There was a word that was a bit like that. I can't remember. It's not coming to me right now. I ended up calling it. But the, it's just total awareness of the whole situation. And for every possible event that arose, it could check against the current things that are going on and then take the right decision of what to do in that instance of it's a cancellation. No, wait a minute. It's an unplugging of the network cable and it's occurring while we're waiting for a cancellation. And then that happens. We need to, what do we need to do, everyone? Yeah, we need to not wait for the response from the server because it's not going to arrive because the network cable was unplugged. That's a typical kind of thing. Nightmare, absolute nightmare. But one of the things that can make these things go better is this kind of construct. Wow, yeah, stressful times. So what I'm going to do is see that it should print it happened when this flag gets set. And how are we going to set the flag? Oh, I'm going to try something here. I'm going to create another variable. Count. And create a variable count. We can put that there. And I want to change what the variable type is, though. Wait, where's the thing for the variable count? Oh, it's here. We're going to make this an integer. That's a lot of UI just for that. We've got, this is a count now, right? And at the beginning, when we kick this thing off, I'm going to set the count. Am I back? Yeah, it's back. It went down. So yes, there's an increment, which is good because otherwise I need to take the get of the variable and a set of the variable, and there we go. Right, but this will increment the variable, and then we sort of give it the variable we want to increment. That's weird. Why is there truncate? Why did it put a truncate in there? What? Why are you truncating my... What does it need a truncate for? Oh dear God. Never mind. I don't even know. I can only assume that this takes a big... Let me try. So that's really annoying me. It's like type safety gone crazy. Where's the... If I click on count, get this drawer opening it. And change it to integer 64. This could break connections. Well, I'm not using it. Alright. What we've got to do then is take this. My guess is it won't truncate it now. Oh, it still did. Oh, why are you truncating it? All right. That's just an annoyance. I will leave it. So every time this gets called, oh, I'm being an idiot. How embarrassing. I was converting a float to a whatever. That was tiredness there. Right, set. And...
Hello, Dino.
No, I wanted to get... How? Try that again. Get count. My favourite thing in the world, dragging a mouse around. Did you know that? It's just like... Oh, that's interesting. What is that? A dot. What? I don't understand. You wonder about this. I'm learning Unreal. I'm teaching myself Unreal. I don't know why it does that. There's probably a good reason. And I'm guessing that, well, we'll see if it increments. It doesn't feel right to me. What I'll do then is print... Okay, so you type safe thing you. Are you going to convert my... I guess it's an integer. Are you going to convert my integer to a string automatically for me, or I'm going to have to rummage around in documentation now? What's the betting? Oh, did that? I know. Right, so this is an automatic converter. That's what that means. And the reason there's an automatic converter here is because I changed this count to a big thing because I thought it was something else. There we go. It probably needs to be just an integer, not integer 64. Yes, change the variable type. Yes. All right. This count, I think it's going to do this without a cast. Ah, right. I solved that mystery. And then this will convert. That's quite nice. It does that. Yeah, that converts the integer to the string so it can be printed. What we should see now is this will do nothing because it's going to sit there waiting for this flag to set. I'm not setting it yet, but what I should have is a count going up every time as I'm incrementing my count. See what we get. Hello. Yeah. Oh, there we go. And scroll down. DevOps. So, yeah, so that's working. That's incrementing. Great. And so what I'm going to do now is going to increment that variable until it reaches a value. So, of course, that means putting in an if statement. It's a branch statement. If. And we need a comparison. This will be one line of code. This hurts. I need to take this and put a comparator. Like maybe I can do this. Integer greater than integer. All right. and the integer is greater than 20. It becomes greater than 20. This becomes true. And when this becomes true, feel excitement here. It's going to set the flag. I suppose I could just set the flag every frame, but I could put this into the flag, but then it's, could I? No. Well, yeah, it's not going to save much because I have to actually have an execution in order to do the set. So it's fine, all right, whatever. It's going to eventually execute this because the count went above 20, and then we're going to do set variable. Set variable, set, no, not set variable. You say set count. No, set flag. So it's basically whatever I called it, but you do set flag, and I can't type anymore. Set flag. True. Did I ever set the flag to false? Dear me. I did not set the flag to false. I think I'd prefer to do that. So all we can do is use a thing called a sequence just to stop it getting all strung out in a line, because otherwise you end up with this great long so it can go a bit tidier if you do this, but I need to do this one first. Because the other one gets stuck in the delay, then it never returns. That's another thing I want to investigate, how sequences work with the delay coroute. What I'm going to do is set flag no.
Hello, Dino.
Say anything. So first of all, it clears the flag, then it goes and sets this count 0. And then it, I think this makes more sense to do it like this actually. So that we do that instead. So this is the initialization where it clears the flag and resets the count to 0, and then it immediately goes into the wait. This is wait until the flag is set, then print it happened. Meanwhile, on here, the event click comes in, count was cleared, but now the count is incremented every frame, and it is printed every frame, and then it is checked against the value 20. If it's greater than 20, it will do true, which means that it's going to set the flag. When it sets the flag, this, which is waiting, see that the flag is set, and then it can continue the next step. It prints it happened. And it was very fast. I'm going to actually, because there's no build up there, you know, it just happens so fast. There is no room for a drum roll or anything. So bad.
Hello, Dino.
Of course, it carries on printing, but it did actually say it happened. When it reached 200. DevOps. It happened. To make that a little neater, we could stop it doing that. Stop it printing this if Right, okay, yes. So what I want to do is to print the value, but only if it's not setting it. So this is where I'm going to do an operation here. Is the equivalent of moving one line of code. I'd be done now in an editor, but in a text editor, I'd be done. Oh gosh, it's hurting my head. So it goes. This actually now goes to here. This goes nowhere, and that's the answer to that. So basically, while it's less than 200, it prints. Otherwise, it sets the flag, and then it should stop. Oh, flipping it. Can I scroll to the bottom, please? Right. It's not working, is it? Oh, dear me. Is there a way of automatically clearing? Okay. Right, there is. There's a flag for that. So that little DevOps feature there means that I have to keep wondering about it. Boom. And so there you've got an asynchronous wait from the begin play event. This would be the equivalent of, say, in Unity, you doing the start function and making it IEnumerable so it's immediately executed as a coroutine. And then in here you do while the flag is not set, yield return null. Then move on to the next thing once that's done. I think that was actually pretty useful. I didn't get anywhere with what I intended to do, which was to work on the well, actually, though, it's useful for that, because what I want to do is to create an asynchronous listener on a socket. So it's going to have to wait for a connection to come in, but because I can do, this sort of coroutine-y thing here with a delay of 0, I can actually set up a loop and have a point here where it waits until a connection comes in, and then it can respond to the connection and so on. So I could probably do a lot of the work in Blueprint. Now, since this module that I'm going to be able to attach to an object, what it's going to be doing is it's going to be waiting for some asynchronous information to come in associated with it. So I've still got to sort out how that's going to happen to change its position. If I can do that, then I can have things in the scene which can be moved over the network, and then my Phi project is going to make network connections when it wants to change the state of things. This should be really nice. So because trying to do a little bit of work with Phi, with showing how it can work with network code, you see that inside the Phi language, you literally would need to say when, something like when connection something. So it might, I haven't built the syntax for this yet, but if we were going a little object orientated, no, like a structure, you go on connection new, or I might go with count. It might work. So every time there's a new connection, there's a counter. The counter increments on every new connection, therefore the counter changes every time there's a new connection. You could say on connection count, or on listener count, something like that. Then it would trigger a next step. And so because everything in the Phi language is basically a construction of that says when something changes, do this. You can see how this works. It's like there's no loops, there's no asynchronous stuff, there's no. You just basically say when the connection comes in, do this, and then somewhere else it says when this happens, then do this. And it should be able to write a little mock web server in Phi when I've developed it in like 2 lines code. That's sort of the idea, and we'll see where we go with that. But right now, this has actually been very useful because I basically know how to do a yield return null in Blueprint, and only do it in the event graph, I think, of an object, because you can't do it within a function. Certainly you can't do that. You can't put a delay in a function because the function itself doesn't have any ability to be a coroutine, right? But the fact that this is possible, this is really good news, because this, just in general, because it means that that kind of construct is incredibly useful for anywhere that you need to wait for something to happen. So that was quite productive, even if I didn't get to any C++. And I've got to go to bed now. It's getting late. And thanks for watching. This is the first stream in about 2 years. Is it? I don't know when I used to stream. It was a while ago. I've got new things to stream, so that's good. And it's been a hell of a year. Hopefully this is going to be a better one. Take care. 2 years on YouTube. So yeah. And then I did do some streaming again on about 1.5 years total. And it's amazing to see you guys still there. It's like, wow. Never went away. Take care, everybody. Have a good night. See you again soon. Peace.